When charm hides darkness, my experience with a friend. The summer of my junior year in college was supposed to be carefree and filled with adventure. Instead, it turned into a haunting chapter of my life that I would never forget. I had just moved into a new apartment with my best friend, Sarah, in a bustling neighborhood on the outskirts of town. The streets were alive with the sounds of laughter, music, and the aromas of food wafting from nearby restaurants. It was vibrant, and I felt a rush of excitement as I embraced the freedom of adulthood. I remember the day vividly. It was a sunny afternoon when I first met him, Eric, the charming young man who lived in the apartment directly across the hall. He had an easy smile and an inviting demeanor that instantly made me feel at ease. We exchanged pleasantries and small talk during our brief encounters in the hallway. He seemed like the kind of person you could easily become friends with. I was drawn to his magnetic personality, and soon enough, he became a regular presence in my life. Eric was studying psychology at the nearby university, a field that piqued my interest as I was majoring in sociology. Our shared interests sparked deep conversations that often lasted late into the night. I admired his passion for understanding the human mind, and he often spoke of his desire to help others. He had a way of making everyone feel valued, and his kindness radiated through our interactions. However, there were subtle hints that something about Eric wasn't quite right. Occasionally, I caught glimpses of darkness in his eyes, a flicker of something unsettling that left me feeling uneasy. I brushed it off, convincing myself that everyone had their quirks, and it was likely just my imagination running wild. After all, I was young and naive, eager to find excitement in the mundane. As the weeks turned into months, our friendship blossomed. Eric introduced me to his circle of friends, a mix of lively individuals who shared our passions. We spent weekends together, attending parties, exploring the city, and engaging in spirited discussions about life, love, and our futures. I felt lucky to have found such a tight-knit group, and Eric quickly became one of my closest confidants. Yet, as I grew closer to him, I noticed changes in his behavior. He became increasingly withdrawn at times, lost in thought. There were moments when he would gaze out the window, a distant look in his eyes, as if he were processing something heavy. I began to sense an underlying tension within him, a storm brewing beneath his charming exterior. It was during one of those moments that he shared something that would shake me to my core. He revealed that he had experienced a troubled childhood. His father had been emotionally abusive, and his mother had left when he was young. I felt sympathy for him, understanding how those early experiences could shape a person's psyche. But as he continued to share, I felt an odd discomfort rising within me. He spoke of feelings of anger and resentment, emotions that seemed to bubble just beneath the surface. It was as if he was on the brink of unleashing something dark, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. Despite my reservations, I didn't want to abandon him. I believed in the power of friendship and thought I could help him work through his issues. I encouraged him to seek therapy, but he brushed off the suggestion, insisting that he could handle it on his own. I wanted to believe he was strong enough to overcome his past, but the more I learned, the more my instincts screamed at me to be cautious. The turning point came one fateful night in early September. It was a Friday, and our group had decided to celebrate the end of summer with a gathering at a local bar. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. I felt a sense of belonging among my friends, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. Eric was particularly animated that night, his energy infectious as he danced and engaged with everyone around him. As the night progressed, I noticed a shift in Eric's behavior. He seemed to become more aggressive, his laughter a bit too loud, his movements a bit too erratic. It was as if he were trying to prove something, and I found myself growing increasingly uncomfortable. When I tried to pull him aside for a moment of quiet, he brushed me off, insisting he was fine. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then it happened. I stepped outside for some fresh air, hoping to clear my mind and escape the overwhelming noise. As I stood on the sidewalk, I noticed a commotion down the street. A group of people had gathered, their voices raised in panic. My heart raced as I approached, curiosity getting the better of me. What I saw left me frozen in place. A man lay on the ground, blood pooling around him. The chaos unfolded as people screamed and called for help. I instinctively reached for my phone to dial 911, but before I could, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see Eric standing beside me, his face pale. "Let's go," he urged, his voice urgent. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to stay. "We should help," I protested. "No, it's too late. We can't get involved," he insisted, pulling me away. I found myself torn between my desire to help and the fear that was coursing through my veins. Reluctantly, I followed him as he led me back to the bar, my heart heavy with guilt. I felt as if I was abandoning someone in need. But Eric's grip was firm, and I didn't know how to resist. That night marked a turning point in our relationship. Eric's behavior became increasingly erratic, and I began to see a side of him I had never noticed before. He became obsessed with the news coverage of the incident, often discussing it in detail and expressing fascination with the psychology behind violence. I tried to steer the conversation in a different direction, but he seemed enthralled by the darkness that surrounded the event. Days turned into weeks, and the incident continued to haunt me. I couldn't shake the feeling that Eric was somehow involved, though I had no evidence to support my suspicions. He had changed in ways I couldn't comprehend, and I felt trapped in a friendship that was spiraling out of control. I knew I needed to distance myself from him, but the thought of losing our friendship terrified me. One evening, as I sat in my room contemplating my next move, I received a message from a friend. They informed me that the police were investigating Eric in connection to the incident at the bar. My heart dropped as I processed the information. I felt a mix of disbelief and fear, struggling to reconcile the person I thought I knew with the allegations that now loomed over him. I tried to confront Eric about the situation, but he dismissed my concerns, insisting that it was all a misunderstanding. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt lingered like a dark cloud overhead. I felt trapped, unsure of how to navigate the tangled web of friendship, loyalty, and fear. As the investigation unfolded, I noticed Eric becoming more erratic. He would lash out at small things, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. I was constantly on edge, unsure of what would set him off. The once magnetic personality I had been drawn to felt like a distant memory, replaced by someone I barely recognized. The breaking point came when I discovered that Eric had been lying to me about his whereabouts on the night of the incident. I stumbled upon a series of messages on his phone, detailing his plans to meet someone in a secluded area of the city. My heart raced as I read the words, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. I couldn't ignore the evidence staring me in the face. I made the difficult decision to cut ties with him. It was a painful choice, but I knew I had to protect myself. I packed up my things and moved back in with my parents, seeking solace in the familiarity of home. The fear of what Eric might do if he found out gnawed at me, and I felt a deep sense of loss for the friendship we once shared. As the weeks passed, I began to learn more about Eric's past and the circumstances that led to the incident at the bar. It turned out that he had a history of behavioral issues and a troubled family background. The revelations shocked me, and I felt a mix of sympathy and fear. It was clear that Eric had been wrestling with his demons, and now they were consuming him. Despite my decision to distance myself from him, I couldn't shake the memories of our time together. I found myself wondering what had happened to the kind, charismatic person I had befriended. The weight of guilt hung over me, a constant reminder that I had played a part in his downward spiral. Then, one day, I received a phone call from a mutual friend. They informed me that Eric had been arrested and was facing serious charges. My heart sank as I processed the news. I felt a mix of relief and sorrow, knowing that he was finally being held accountable for his actions but also grieving the loss of the friendship we once shared. In the weeks that followed, I kept a safe distance from the situation, focusing on rebuilding my life. I immersed myself in my studies, reconnected with old friends, and found comfort in the familiar. I joined a volunteer group, pouring my energy into helping others, a way to channel my emotions into something positive. However, the memory of Eric lingered. I often thought about what could have been, about the person he had been before the darkness took hold. It was a difficult reality to face, one that reminded me of the fragility of the human psyche and the consequences of unresolved trauma. Eventually, I learned about the outcome of Eric's situation through news articles and social media updates. He had been convicted of several charges and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. As I read the headlines, I felt a profound sense of sadness wash over me. The kind, charming friend I had once known was gone, replaced by someone unrecognizable, trapped in a cycle of violence and despair. It was a sobering reminder of how easily lives can spiral out of control. I had seen firsthand how mental health issues can manifest in destructive ways, and it served as a wake-up call for me. I became passionate about raising awareness for mental health, determined to help others before they fell into similar traps. As I finished my senior year, I carried the lessons I had learned with me. I was no longer just a student, I was an advocate, using my experiences to shed light on the complexities of the human experience. I volunteered at local organizations, sharing my story and encouraging others to seek help and support. Looking back on that summer, I realized it had shaped me in ways I couldn't have imagined. I had faced fear and uncertainty, emerged stronger, and learned to trust my instincts. The experiences had taught me about the complexity of human nature and the importance of compassion, even in the face of darkness. Now, as I sat in the park one sunny afternoon, reflecting on my journey, I felt a sense of peace. I had grown from the challenges I faced and learned to embrace the light in my life. I was ready to move forward, knowing that every experience, good or bad, contributed to the person I was becoming. And so, I carried the memories of my past with me, using them as stepping stones on my path to a brighter future. I understood that my friendship with Eric, no matter how it had ended, had been a crucial part of my journey, teaching me about resilience, empathy, and the importance of seeking help when needed. As I took a deep breath and looked up at the clear blue sky, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Life was unpredictable, but I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the lessons learned from my past and a heart open to the possibilities that lay ahead.